storm is slamming into much of the nation. The South.
Okay, I have Reverend Hatch on the line and ready.
Okay,
Freezing rain and ice in some areas.
say hello
AP's
to
Jackie
him.
Quinn.
Airlines canceled thousands of flights. Officials
Okay.
residents to stay
hi.
off the roads. This
Pastor Hatch,
blast
how
of
are
frigid
you?
weather, which began Tuesday night, put a long stretch of states from
Good.
New
You know
Mexico
what? There
and
is a gentleman
Colorado
who's
to
coming
Maine
on,
under winter storm
and I want you
warnings
to
and
hear.
watches.
He was the gentleman who
Forecasters
you
expect parts of
said,
Illinois and
you know,
Indiana to
that
get
you
the
were a
most
little
snow,
surprised that he
maybe
didn't
a foot
know
and a half by
what
the
black
end of the day.
homeowners or people
The
who are
Pentagon
ambitious to be
isn't revealing much about
homeowners
this,
go
but it
through.
says U.S. Special Forces launched a
And
counterterrorism
I'd like you to.
raid
I'm
in
going to do an
Syria
interview
this
with him at
morning.
7,
No U.S.
and I'd like you to
casualties, said the
listen
Pentagon. The AP's Carrie
and let me know
Shamas
what you
with
think
what we
and where
already
you
know.
think
The operation,
he
which
needs to go. And
lasted
if you
about
could
2
even
hours,
text
was
me
deemed as a successful large-scale raid by the Pentagon. So
some of the
far,
things
over a dozen
that you
people
think
have
he
been
needs to touch
reported
upon.
killed, many of
I
which
mean,
were
some of our
children. The
realities, right?
Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby
Yeah,
confirmed there were no U.S.
Can you turn that
casualties.
down
The raid
just a
took
bit,
place in the town of Atmir by
Matt?
the Turkish border. The area is dotted with camps.
Yeah, there's a Channel 7 story that I just text to, because I just had my house appraised, and I knew that it was,
That appraisal thing, right?
yeah, I just had that situation, and boy, when I emailed it to a Chase home person here, and then in New York, and then they scramble. They just call me sir, because, you know, appraisals, it's such an inexact science.
Well, would you do me a
Part of the
favor?
whole racist.
Could
But
I call you?
difficulty being on there at 7. I could. Yeah, we could.
Could
Yeah,
you? Could I bring you on and just because I'm going to interview him because he's become, he's taken out a little sponsorship on the show and I'm grateful for that. But I've told him, I said, there's a lot that and that he wants to learn. He said, hey, look, I'm a white guy. I'm a white Jewish guy from the northern suburbs. What do I know? I said, these are the things that you need to know. Because
it's Leah Hope. It was Leah Hope's piece.
Okay.
And it was out of a house in South Shore, down there where your folks live at in that area. And this guy's off the lake, and his house was undervalued, but I knew about it all the time. But I took it, because I just refinanced my house because I'm doing a cash app, and they just the guy he's trying to find out what number I was looking for. I didn't really know. And so he put a number, but it's a very inexact science. It's racially driven. When you look at Natalie Moore's book called Southside, you can see how race and real estate has a lot to do with the way racism.
Well, I mean, it manifests, right? And it kills our generational wealth.
Families. Absolutely.
So, I mean, multi-generational wealth, shall I say?
Well, this was two days ago.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying it's real.
Yeah,
it's real.
Yeah, it's very real, and that's all I did. I sent it to these Chase officials and said this is real, and so they called me yesterday, and they were just very nervous. But I wasn't trying to really make them, the focal point or nervous. But I think the number was that only like 8% of the appraisers are black. An appraiser is somebody with a degree in geology. Somebody looking for something to do with their BA. There's no college degree in appraisal, so it's really something like getting an insurance license.
Well, you know what? The thing is, I want to know what you know. And experience is a great teacher anyway. It's not that because you can study this in college and you don't know anything if you don't understand the politics. That drive, I mean, it's just like South Shore, our South Shore in particular, and the greater Kenwood area. That the appraisals are about to go through the roof as soon as black people get out of here because of the Obama Center that's coming. So there's a lot. Just
And
give me.
As soon as go ahead.
No. I wanted you to finish before we come up. We're coming up in a minute.
No, just the operative is as soon as black people get out.
Well, and we're getting out, and we can't afford to stay. So what he's trying to do is find a way for you to refinance your home and things like that. And
right,
hold on, I'll make the introduction to you after. I'll explain after the show. Okay.
Yeah, you can wait. You can wait till afterwards. Yeah, because
No, but I'm going to bring you on,
yeah.
and I'm going to have Matt call you back unless you just want to sit and listen to, our COVID-19 discussion.
10 seconds.
No, he can call me back.
Well, he'll call you back at 7.
Tonight.
Okay, stand by. We're coming up. Thank you, Pastor Hatch.
Great.
Change the world, change the world. And change the world, we can change the world.
You can turn it up just a little bit.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
To a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to meet my morning stars on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show. Thank you for going over there and liking and subscribing. Please like, subscribe, and share the show. Please like, subscribe, everybody. Andre, Shirley from Philadelphia, Linear Bob from Silicon Valley, and Angela, and Philip, and Barbara Bacon from Oak Park. Bring it in, Jan, and Laura, everybody, and Donnie. And I'm just seeing you all come on in today. Please like and share, and like and subscribe, and tell people about the show. But please like and share this show today, everybody who is on. It's a joy to be with you. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. You can text us at that number. We want to hear your thoughts about everything that's going on. President Trump, 2024. It looks like he's doing a soft launch on that. What do you think about that? Even in the midst of the January 6th investigation, what about these vaccines that are now going to be given to the children? There are a lot of questions about how many should be given to children, or if they should be given to them at all. So, a 6-month-old, 6 months to 5 years of age. We're going to be asking Dr. Deborah Holden and Dr. Shanita Knighton about that. And we're going to be talking with David Hochberg. You've heard me talk about his team on this show, and then Reverend Marshall Hatch is going to join us once again to talk about appraisals. The challenges that Black home owners face, and women, vulnerable populations routinely, and Black people are especially vulnerable to this, to having our properties undervalued or underappraised. And then when you get a white friend to step in, the markup is incredible. We're going to be talking about that, because that is what's driving people out of their homes. That is, and even renters. A lot of renters, you have some options to get some money to buy some of these 2 flats and 3 flats, but you need to know that there's some people out there who want to help and who want to help you help yourself. So we're going to be talking about that. And of course, Dr. Max Wolf, what is going on with these jobs, everybody? This jobs report does not look good. And we got a lot to talk about on the Santita Jackson Show today. So call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And I want to hear your voices today. Can't wait to hear you. Hey, everybody, did you survive the storm yesterday? Oh, it's going to be icy today, so please be careful. Please, please, please be careful. I wonder if we're going to get another one. I love these storms because they get so still, but it is now very cold, and it is very icy. Remember, it was raining before the snow hit, and so now it's cold, so there's a whole sheet of ice underneath. Think about that, and please be careful. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 27 degrees. It's not there yet, and we're going to have some more snow showers. Minneapolis, St. Paul will have a high of 2 degrees above zero. It will be sunny today. The Dow closed up 224 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 74 points. The S&P 500 closed up 42 points. In the NBA, the Timberwolves will be meeting the Pistons tonight, and the Bulls will be playing the Raptors. And guess what? Well, Chicago and Minneapolis, St. Paul met yesterday in the NHL, and the Wild were triumphant over Chicago's team, 5-0. Call me at 773-763-9278. Want to hear your thoughts today about even the headlines that happened overnight. You know how that goes. More than 100 million people are still under a winter weather alert across at least 25 states, everybody. Get this, from the Mexican border to New England. It's a massive winter storm. It has pummeled us. Some parts of Chicago even got 12 inches, everybody. In the South and the Midwest, it was a triple whammy of snow, ice and sleet, and it's still hammering us, everybody. More than 20 inches of snow, everybody, get this, piled up in Colorado Springs. Wow, all around the state of Illinois. Many of us got a foot, so please be careful, everybody. President Joe Biden is sending 3,000 American troops to Poland, Germany, and Romania to bolster NATO countries in Eastern Europe as tens of thousands of Russian troops amass along Ukraine's border. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby said the deployments included roughly 2,000 troops that were deployed from the United States to Poland and Germany. In addition, approximately 1,000 troops currently based in Germany were moving to Romania. Kirby said the moves, which would happen in the coming days, were not permanent and emphasized these forces are not going to fight in Ukraine. Have you heard about the Canadian truckers? Well, they've been protesting the COVID-19 health restrictions by staging a blockade of 18-wheelers in Ottawa, Canada. They're getting a lot of support on the ground. People have declared the week-long assembly and unlawful occupation of the country's capital and say they're looking at every single option, including military aid, to bring the situation to an end. We will continue to look at that. The National Archives decided yesterday that it will turn over former Vice President Mike Pence's records to the committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol as early as next month, after former President Donald Trump said he wanted to keep secret more than 100 documents. As we look at the Laquan McDonald case, as Jason Van Dyke, his convicted killer, is going to be released from jail, as NAACP and other organizations, Congressman Bobby Rush, Rainbow Push, Reverend Jesse Jackson, so many are calling on the federal government to intervene, the Department of Justice. Guess what? Well, maybe this is a harbinger of things to come, Pastor Marshall Hatch. The mother of Tamir Rice, who was shot to death at age 12 by Cleveland, Ohio police, you remember that several years ago, condemned the U.S. Department of Justice because they refused to reopen her son's case. She said, quote, "Shame on them. I think they're pitiful and pathetic. And at this point, no one is going to get justice when it comes to police shootings in America. It's disgusting that I don't have an indictment for my 12-year-old son," close quote. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark, who heads the DOJ Civil Rights Division, told the Rice family in a letter dated last Friday that the federal prosecutors who looked at the case could not prove that Rice's civil rights were violated intentionally when he was shot and killed by the officer. Wow, everybody. Call me and tell me what you think about that. 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. Pastor Marshall Hatch, Reverend Dr. Marshall Hatch, brilliant preacher, theologian, scholar, indeed a leader in our community. We're so grateful for all that he and his wife and sons and his family do. They just keep on coming. We love the Hatch family. Pastor of the new Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church. If you have not been there, please go. It is a cathedral, and it is something to see. The largest renderings of African-American heroes in the world in stained glass are at this cathedral. He is so conscientious. Welcome once again home to the show, Pastor Hatch. Well, of course, we're going to have you on a little bit later, but we're going to get some good news from you right now. How you doing?
Blessed, and good morning to the audience, Miss Santita Jackson.
Thank you for those two T's.
Absolutely. Listen, this morning I want to lift up scripture in the Old Testament, 2 Kings, this old story of these four lepers. And verse 6, they raise the question as they are outside of a city that is starving to death, that's been besieged by the armies of Assyria. And so they are outside the city. They're in a sort of they got a small lepers colony. They're the marginalized in a desperate situation. And so they ask the question, why sit we here until we die? It's one of my favorite stories in the Old Testament. It's about faith in the middle of desperation. And I think about it, especially in a time like this, because many of us, as I was mentored by your dad as a young pastor, and there's so many young activists that have emerged, and some of us are quite concerned because so many of them, they're interested in the cause and they want to fight. but they are not necessarily tied to these deep wells of faith. And some of them are so despairing, especially on days like today when you think about, we thought, Jason Van Dyke would be given appropriate not only conviction, but sentence. And so it just seems like the more we fight, the more we find justice elusive. And so just to get that faith to continue to fight, we really get it out of these faith communities, and we get it out of these ancient stories in the ancient texts that connect us to God by faith. And so that's the kind of story this is. These 4 lepers, they are in a place of desperation. And faith is designed for desperation, not for your best days, but for your worst days. That's the purpose of having faith. And so they're outside the outside the city of Samaria, and they ask, why would we sit here and die? In other words, starve to death. I sent this message to my nephew. I called it at one point, "Get Out," because he was in the movie Get Out. He actually was the TSA guy, Lil Rel Howery is my nephew. Yes. And so, yeah. And so, so I told him about that. I said, the lepers are in this situation, and they say, why would we sit here and die? And so, in other words, they got 3 bad options. They could either sit there and starve to death, or they could go into a city that's already starving. In fact, there's cannibalism in the city. The people are so desperate. Or they could go to the enemy's camp, and they said, if we go to the enemy's camp, they will probably kill us, but they might keep us alive. And it's like, what do you do when you got 3 bad options? And that's where faith kicks in. Faith says you always make the best decision, even in a bad situation. When there are no good options, you make the best decision. And like these lepers, they choose to live. They choose to give life the best chance. And so they say, we're not going to sit here and die. We're not going to go into a starving city. We'll go to the enemy's camp. And they'll probably kill us, but they might keep us alive. They choose the best option in a bad situation. And when they get up, this is one of my favorite scriptures because it demonstrates that often miracles have a reasonable explanation. Just because it has a reasonable explanation don't mean it's not God. And the text says that God calls the Assyrians to hear a noise, because when they got to the tent, they found that the tents were empty with the stuff still in it, with food, with drink, with clothing, with silver, with gold, and nobody was there. And the Bible says, see, what happened was when they got up at twilight, the Syrians in the camp at night heard a noise, and they thought that the Samaritans had aligned with the Egyptians, and their fears got the best of them, and they vacated their camps. And they hear the noise at the same time that the lepers are stumbling over to the tents. And the mention is the noise they heard was the lepers. And they created more noise by stirring, which meant that God was behind it all the time, which means that ultimately they remembered, and we remember, that faith teaches us God is always in full control. And God works miracles, but only when you get up and get out. You have to be in motion. You have to create some noise. You have to create some action, some momentum. And that was the noise that cleared the camps. And they find themselves sitting there with more than their heart could desire of food, drink, clothing, silver, gold. And they say to themselves, listen, why don't we tell the people in the city what we found? We got good news. And they tell the people in the city, and they end up saving a city that they were marginalized, that they were put out of. It acknowledges that God has a greater plan all the time. In other words, God had a plan for them even though they were in the margin. And I just want to encourage somebody today. You might feel like an outsider. You might feel marginalized. You might feel less than. But God knows where you are. God operates in the margins. God makes the last first and the first last. And God's eye is on the sparrow. And certainly God is watching you.
Amen.
So I tell you to get up, get up, get up, get up.
Amen.
And get out.
Amen.
And you'll see the hand of God. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
That's our good news today.
That is the good news. You know, my father often said when he was about to run for president, he said, you know, if you don't run, you're guaranteed to lose. If you do run, you might not lose and you just might win. But you got to get up.
Just might.
You just got to get up, everybody. Get up.
Yeah.
Pastor, are you...
Don't sit there. Get out.
Get up and get get out very quickly. Are you worshiping in person? Are you doing it virtually? Is it a hybrid? How can we see you on Sunday?
We're doing the hybrid. Of course, we're always on Facebook Live, on YouTube, but we are hybrid, and so we do have people in the pews. But most people are online, and it's been an incredible season that has allowed us to expand our capacity to communicate the good news. And so,
and your Facebook page is?
Our Facebook page is New Mount Pilgrim, Chicago.
New Mount Pilgrim. And the address, if people want to come in and see this glorious cathedral.
301 West Washington Boulevard, Chicago, Illinois. And you mentioned Laquan McDonald. I had reporters in this week because our young people designed the last 25 by 25 foot diameter stained glass window of religious art, and they had childhood martyrs in there. And one of the images they chose was Laquan McDonald. Laquan McDonald is in the holy place. That was installed in 2019. And so we're going to keep fighting.
Well, I hope you'll join us tomorrow. I'm inviting you right now because, of course, Jason Van Dyke, the then Chicago police officer, I think it's important for us to emphasize that he was a police officer at the time for the Chicago Police Department. The man who killed him and who was convicted of killing him and sent to prison will be released today. He's in a halfway house, which means he is on his way home. And so we're going to be talking about that tomorrow because people are calling for the Department of Justice and so much. And so we'll be talking about that extensively. Cannot wait to have you with us tomorrow on our panel. Sending you much love, Senior Pastor. Yes, of the New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church here in Chicago. Profound preacher, theologian. Get out. Get up and get out, everybody. And be careful on this ice today. How about that? Oh, blessings to you, Pastor. Blessings. We've got Dr. Shanita Knighton, who I'm going to bring to you. We want to have her speak to you and your congregation and your leadership group. Of course, she is an infection preventionist, registered nurse, research scholar from Case Western Reserve University, and a lady of mighty Delta Sigma Theta. Go on, Soror. I love it. But yesterday, we were talking yesterday, and we embrace all of the members of the Divine Nine and all of our sorors in Black Greekdom. Of course we do. That having been said, I came across something yesterday that struck me, Dr. Knighton. When I was reading the headlines, this is from a CNN report that children younger than 5 in America could soon begin receiving the COVID-19 vaccines. Pfizer and BioNTech are requesting emergency use authorization for their 2-dose COVID-19 vaccine for children ages 6 months up to 5 years. And then as I'm, going through, looking for, stories and just really digging into some stories, I came across this one that really kind of struck me. The Food and Drug Administration, this is from Stat News, the willingness to consider authorizing a COVID-19 vaccine developed by Pfizer and BioNTech for children under 5 without evidence yet that it would be protective because it's under emergency use authorization. Help me with that. I mean, where should we be with this, or what questions should we be asking our doctors, particularly for someone as young as 6 months?
Good morning.
Good morning. I give you a whole lot, don't I?
Situation.
Before I even say hello.
It's okay. The most important thing to me of when we think about, I would say, our babies, right? Meaning like, okay, it's different for us as, let's say, adults who have gone through life with, I would say, beat our bodies down in so many words, through stress, of working, through eating unfavorable things. There's a combination of things that puts us more at risk. And even when you look at the data that the CDC shows, as the age goes down, the risk lessens, right? Okay. Now, there are instances where we have babies that may have, let's say, not a good start in life, whether they're a NICU baby and maybe still dealing with some health issues until they retain their own health. There's babies that may suffer from unfavorable conditions because they're hereditary. So I'm not speaking about those particular babies, right? But I'm speaking about the ones, because those would be considered, let's say, immunocompromised. But when we talk about other children as early as 6 months, thinking about children, even up to about 10, the data shows that the chances of them of dying from COVID is significantly lower. So out of the 899,000 individuals, and this is pointing back to maybe about a month ago when the data was released, it was about 2,300. And I'm not saying that any life is not valuable, but the question comes is, does the vaccine outweigh, does the benefits outweigh the risk at this point? Meaning that, yes, based off of what the company says, based off of what they're reporting that the benefits outweigh the risk to not concern ourselves with the long-term consequences. But in this population, these kids are going to be around. They're going to be around to understand potentially what those benefits were and what those unintended consequences were. And these are babies that cannot make decisions for themselves. And so when I think about the decision making, and this is even, let's say, for my own children, it's me understanding that for me, they're my vulnerable population. They're my vulnerable population in that I can make decisions for them that can either help them or hurt them. And in this particular instance, as parents, we think to ourselves, what can we do to make sure that we're practicing preventative measures? In some cases, some parents have decided that for them, the risk of COVID or the risk of them getting COVID, was greater early on. The issue that I've always had has been the transmission. We know that you can still catch COVID even if you are vaccinated. So for that reason, even though I'm taking care of my compromised mom, the reason that I would have had my small children get it was if the vaccine prevented transmission in order to be able to protect her, right?
Absolutely.
But if it doesn't prevent transmission to protect her, then the question comes for many parents is, why would I do it if I know that my kid has a better chance of surviving from COVID than potentially concerning themselves with the long-term effects of the vaccine?
Well, hold that thought.
And this is
hold that thought, because we're going to be back on the other side of the break, because these are questions that people are having, because we're seeing people who are not getting boosted. So there's a disconnect. We saw the study yesterday, the Monmouth poll, that said that 70% of Americans said, look, we're over it. We're over COVID now. So there's a disconnect, and we want to find out exactly what we need to do, the questions you need to ask. We want to allay any fears that you might have. Okay? We're just going to work with you on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute with Dr. Shanina Knighton. Shanina Knighton, registered nurse, infection preventionist from Case Western Reserve University, part of the Santita Jackson Show. Thank you, sweetie. How you doing? Shanina?
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking to a guest. You know, you talk to your morning stars.
you know, I got to. You can talk to them too, because they always reach out to you.
No,
Say hey to them,
no,
girl.
absolutely. Hey, morning stars.
And Morning Stars, please wish Lorraine a happy birthday. She didn't even let me know it's her birthday. Everybody wish Lorraine a happy birthday. Love you, girly girl. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. That's right. Give her some love. Yes.
Yes.
Um,
I was about to say, yes, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. What were you about to say, Matt?
so you want me to call Reverend Hatch back at 7 o'clock, right?
At 7. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did y'all call Dr. Deb?
Yeah, it kept going to voicemail.
Oh, no, she sent me a number. I texted to you.
Okay, I did not get that. Okay, let me send this because I'm not even looking at that. Okay. All right, let me bring her on. Matt, I need you to call Dr. Deb at this number. Okay.
Okay.
I forgot
Right.
that her because you know I'm not looking at that right now.
Gotcha.
Okay. In fact, let me put that over here because, honey, I'm trying to do a whole lot with regard to this show, and it's
Okay. Got it.
okay. Fantastic, and just get her up, please. And we'll be done by about 6:40, about 40:41. So begin to bring things down at 6:39 or 7:39 your time. Okay.
Got it.
Okay. Thanks, sweetie. I gotta move because what I want to do, and I want to. One of the two. Okay. Okay. Try to do that too. Okay. All right. Everybody wish Lorraine a happy birthday. I just was able to get a lot of lovely emoji up. How about that? Girl, it's just a lot to figure out. But there you go. Renato, how you doing? What's going on? Now, where are you? Are you down in Brazil? Let me know. I love Brazil. I haven't been there in years, and I really do want to come back. Fayetteville, Georgia. Hey, Linda. How you doing, sweetie?
Okay, I still got voicemail on that number, but I'll keep trying.
Okay, now wait a minute. Vita, who?
And we have 1 minute.
Oh my gosh. Vita, I don't know who you're talking about, but I will tell her. Lord have mercy. Gonna reach out to you, girl. Okay. Hey, Joyce. Everybody, please go on over to YouTube to the Santita Jackson Show. Do we have Dr. Deb up yet?
Not yet. I got voicemail on that phone too, but I'll keep trying.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, just let me know as soon as we get her up.
Okay, we have just under 30 seconds.
Okay, great. No worries. I'm good. We're good. She got caught in the storm, everybody, and they lost power. So she's got a generator. So she's got to be very careful. She's up in Michigan. I mean, this is the deal.
Yeah.
You know? And can you imagine
10
people who
seconds.
lost power and who have no heat? Oh my gosh. What are they doing? Oh boy.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. We're going to be talking about President Trump 2024. Yeah. He is running. That's what it's looking like. And we're going to be talking with Dwight McKee and attorney Robert Patillo about that in just about 5 minutes. But we've got Dr. Shanina Knight, and we're hoping to get Dr. Deborah Furholt, and everybody send her much love and many prayers. Of course, this storm that has affected more than 100 million Americans, it impacted her too. She lost power. So her mobile phone is has no power, and we're trying to get through to her on her landline. Thank goodness she does have a generator, and it's outside of the home. So everybody just, we're looking at, we're trying to get her on right now. But right now we've got Dr. Knighton on for the next 5 minutes. And we want to talk about just, what would you advise parents to do right now? Because, I've seen a lot of parents who are like, I want to protect my child at all costs. And some are saying, I want to give my child these shots. And some are giving pushback. And then you just have adults who are pushing back on getting boosted because they feel like, they're exhausted or they've taken enough shots. So what would you advise parents to do?
So I would personally suggest, I know that the classic answer is to talk to your provider. Mm-hmm. I get that. And that would be the thing, license-wise, that I'm told to tell you to do, right? Because I cannot give you advice on that. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that I will tell you personally from my perspective is that this has had to be a time of where I've had to ask myself, am I leaning on fear or am I leaning on my intuition and God? And if you are leaning on your intuition and God and you're leaning on your faith, and in this particular instance, let's say you have otherwise healthy individuals and you just don't think that it is for you or your family based off of your risk factors, then I'm going to tell you that sometimes you have to make the best decision for you and yours. But with that being said, also be able to deal with the unintended consequences or the consequences of that decision. And that goes either way, whether you decide to take it or not. The information that I'm expressing this morning, whether it be from my perspective or from the perspective of parents that I've talked to that have shared some of these similar concerns regarding their boosters, regarding, the initial shot, it's understandable because the one thing that we have not explored yet, which is in full transparency, has been the long-term effects. But with the risk, with, let's say, citizens being as sick as they are, with 6 out of 10 having a chronic condition, it is believed, and I'm saying believed because scientifically it has not been shown. It is believed that the benefits will outweigh the risk, even for the ones that are in the long term. And so I'm bringing that up because I'm not sure what assessments any of these companies have done to determine that, because there hasn't been an external opinion that's been done to determine that. And if there is, then it hasn't been shared with the public for them to be able to weigh their options between what the producers and developers of these vaccines and treatments decide versus what an independent individual would decide or company would decide based off of the benefits and risks. So I just express to people, think about where we are. I understand, it was, hey, get this 2 doses, get this 1 dose, you'll be fine. The pandemic will be over with. You can lower masks and don't worry about it. That message just in itself has people skeptical and nervous about getting a booster or getting their child boosted. So for me, I understand why the public is concerned. I cannot ignore the fact that, yes, one message was unclear. Many know, even though I face scrutiny about it, I've always said, even in the emergency use authorization, that it states that the vaccine's purpose was to reduce clinically relevant symptoms, reduce hospitalizations, and reduce deaths. And so for individuals that have been vaccinated, it has done just that. So it did what is listed in the emergency use authorization, not potentially what has been shared in media, is that it would prevent COVID and that everyone would be able to get back to their normal lives. And as a result of that, we pulled back layers way too soon. People pulling back masks because the CDC said if you mask and you don't have to do so. Environmental cleaning was rolled back So you look at all of these things that are rolled back, and here it is. People are asked to be able to get a third dose, and then now, it's the urgency around mandations of putting it into the arms of children, even though we're showing that the first and the second dose reduces hospitalizations, even though it won't reduce transmission. So this comes down to the situation of having to ask yourself, does the benefits outweigh the risk?
Well, you know what? We have to do a lot of thinking, and that's why we appreciate you, just you and Dr. Deb. Just really, we feel better when people talk to us straight. Because that's what we need, because there's so much mistrust out here. We mistrust the corporate media, we mistrust the government, we mistrust all of these authoritative institutions. But when you and Dr. Deb, you, Dr. Shanina Knighton, are a breath of fresh air, and we thank God for you. Prevention Saves Lives. Prevention Saves Lives is her website, and she has a new handle, everybody. It's a lot easier. Hey, Dr. Nina. Hey, DRNINA. Love it, love it, love it. And I knew you want to stick around, because guess what? Attorney Robert Patillo, a Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, brilliant civil rights lawyer, and he is also the host of his own show on WAOK every Sunday. I encourage you to listen to it, WAOK in Atlanta, but you can hear it all over the world from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. And Dwight McKee, brilliant sociologist, who is with us today to talk about Trump 2024. I mean, the headlines are here. Stay right here, Shanina. I know you want to hear, because you're going to stay, or you're going to be a caller in about 2 minutes. What's going on?
I just might be.
You just might be. Here are the headlines. Trump sets stage for 2024. That's from Yahoo News, saying the quiet power louder and louder. Trump soft launches his 2024 campaign. That's from The Atlantic. As the midterms in 2024 loom, Trump's political operation revs up, and on it goes. In a poll that was just taken, it has shown that he could beat President Biden in Florida, for example. So what is going on exactly? What is going on? As he is saying that if these racist investigators from the January 6th committee, and these prosecutors from all around the country, if they do anything illegal, if they mess with him, we're going to have the biggest protests that we've ever seen. What does all of that mean? Let me start with you, Attorney Robert Patillo, because it seems that I had to bring you and Dwight McKee on because you all said this was going to happen. You said he might lose, but he's not going to leave. And he's going to set up a White House at Mar-a-Lago, and oh my gosh, what do you make of where we are right now, this soft launch for 2024?
Well, it's interesting because he never really went away. If you really think about it. And I think part of the problem has been the progressive, the liberal media operation, because they became so addicted to Trump-related coverage that they could never let him go away. If you watch, the late night shows like Kimmel or Fallon or Bill Maher, all they talk about is Trump every single day since he's been out of office, because that's what drives ratings. That's what's easier to write jokes about. If you watch MSNBC or CNN, they talk about Trump more than they talk about Biden, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. Because that's what drives ratings. That's what gets people tuned in. That's what butts in seats. Gives you something to debate about, whether or not Trump is going to be indicted, what's his role in January 6th, XYZ, instead of talking about the Biden agenda. And as we know, for a big part of the American electorate, it comes down to no publicity is bad publicity. That's been the Trump motto, the Trump rhetoric. So the mainstream media has been complicit in allowing the Trump machine to continue going. We remember 2016 when Trump got something like $3 billion in free media, when the news media would broadcast Trump rallies in their totality, 90 minutes of free press, thinking that they were embarrassing when it was really continuing to keep his name relevant with the American people. So Trump never ramped down his operation. The entire time, we've still
seen the same Trump surrogates on every conservative network, every liberal network, quite frankly, still spreading the gospel and the message of Trumpism. So he's always been running. He's always continued running. He's kept his friends closer, his enemies closer. He's kept the Republican Party completely in his pocket this entire time. I've never seen a former president have such sway over current politicians, because everyone knew that this day was going to come where he would start the 2024 campaign. He has continued doing these massive Trump rallies the entire time that he's been out of power. So going into the midterms, his main goal is to ensure that you have a not just a Republican majority in Congress, but a Trump majority in Congress. He's been trying to wipe out those people like Kingslinger and Liz Cheney and other Republicans who have bucked Trump. And that's I think that's his main goal going into 2022, to ensure that if you do get to another January 6th situation where you're trying to overturn the election in the Congress on election day, they'll have the type of Trump majority that will do it. So they're setting themselves up strategically to retake power and maybe retake power permanently. And while the Democrats have to deal with the actual mechanics of running government and trying to keep the economy from collapsing upon itself, they've simply been running this, as I said, Vichy government, having events and briefings and an entire cabinet waiting in Mar-a-Lago, preparing for this point in time when it's time to relaunch and retake the country. So we should be very cognizant of what's happening and very cognizant of how complicit the corporate media has been and continuing to spread the Trump messaging and keeping it relevant in American politics.
Well, I think that we really do need to call out the corporate media, because they are complicit. They can shut you down if they want to wipe you out of the public consciousness. Robert Patillo, they don't mention you. They just don't mention you. They don't pay attention to you. It's as if you are not there. But every single day, he is mentioned. Every single day. And he is at the center of the political discussion in the United States. How can he not be the front runner for the Republican nomination? How can he not be? Very quickly, your response, Robert.
Well, it's not even that he's a front runner. He's the only runner, because if you're any other Republican candidate, what the hell are you going to do, really? If you're Tim Scott, or if you're Nikki Haley, if you're Ted Cruz or Joe Hawley or Marco Rubio, something along those lines, you're not going to win any primary versus Trump. You're not going to go up against that Trump machine, that Trump base. These people who are Trump fanatics, that are probably a third to 40% of the Republican base at this point in time. This is a religious experience with them and Trump. You're not going to convince them at this point in time to turn against the quote-unquote MAGA movement. So if Trump walks into the room, everybody else walks out the room at this point in time in Republican politics. There's no real point in running against him. So there may be a couple brave souls that decide they want to take him on from the center or from the rhino wing of the party. Maybe someone like a Mitt Romney has a third run in him because he has enough money to go toe-to-toe with Trump. It's his own personal war chest despite his age. But frankly, there's really not give him more attention, the more scandals that he has. It frankly is a benefit to him to continuously have more scandals. So Biden really needs to just start ramping up for the Trump 2024 challenge. And I think Democrats have to put some real thought into who's going to be their nominee. That might be a more competitive race than who the Republican nominee is.
Dwight McKee? You can say it. I told you so. You can say it. Go on.
I did told it, y'all. But I just make one correction to Robert's analysis, which I thought was brilliant, by the way.
Absolutely.
Is Trump was never out of power. He was out of office. Not the same thing. He was out of office. He was never out of power because he always controlled a party vicariously and controlled half the government vicariously. And so he has done an extraordinary job of running his part of the government from Florida. The problem the Democrats have, Robert, is that they're in two different games. Is that the Democrats are playing politics and Republicans and Trump them are playing geopolitics. And in a country that is built upon electoral politics, you can win the geopolitical game with a minority, strategic minority, if you could neutralize enough of the opposition. And so Republican strategy is to take enough of the Democratic votes out of play in strategic places so that they become the dominant majority in those strategic places. And that gives them the electoral edge and will put him back in the White House. And so we're really playing two different games. And so whereas we are focusing on voter registration and democracy in the democratic process, it's of no avail. So if you register 500,000 people more in California, you still, and you win the state, you only win those same number of electoral votes. But if you were able to neutralize 10% of the votes in a Michigan and able to register another 30,000 people in Michigan, you can win that state with a surplus of 20,000 people and win all electoral votes. And so because we don't have a strategy to deal with geopolitics, I really believe that Trump is setting up to come back into office. The second thing he's done has been very brilliant, I think, is in him telling the January 6th crowd that he will pardon them, is he's setting up the precedent for his own army. He's saying that if you all follow me, do what I tell you to do, defend my position, then, and I win the presidency, then you have no liability. There's no jeopardy. If you get indicted, I will pardon you too. And so if you become my army and work with me, you have no liability. You have no vulnerability. And so it empowers his crowd to do whatever they think they need to do to keep him in office. The last two things I think that are happening that I think that the Republicans, particularly Trump, is playing brilliantly is that as you look at what's happening in this Russian conflict, I think what Putin is doing is bluffing to empower Trump to say, excuse me, that the Ukraine, I'm willing to invade the Ukraine, or at least to threaten to invade the Ukraine. However, the only one that can negotiate this peace is Trump. He and I already have a good relationship. If you all don't want World War III, then it's in your interest to put Trump back in. Biden is helpless when it comes to me, and I think it's going to give Trump the margins of people who are living in fear to say Trump can save us. And I think Putin has conspired to put that into play to empower him. And then the last thing that's happened in the Ukraine is all these Trump supporters and these mercenaries are in the Ukraine getting fully armed from the United States, arming them for what they think is going to be a battle with the Russians, but it's going to be like Al-Qaeda. What's going to happen is these mercenaries are going to come back here and become part of Trump's army. And believe you and me, they're going to be dangerous and armed. And we have no strategy yet for that. We have to begin to think through that. This thing is much more serious than we understand, and we really don't understand what we're looking at. When a narcissist takes power, real power, and fame, it becomes like crack to him. And now Trump is addicted to being the president and wants to be president for life. He will lose, but he will never leave.
Your thoughts? The last 3 minutes belong to you, Robert Patillo. It sounds just like you. You talked about the Vichy government. You said, hey, he's not going anywhere. And his polling numbers are going up while Democratic numbers are going down, Robert.
Well, I call it the backup quarterback syndrome, because when you think about it, the most popular player on every team was the backup quarterback, because it's so easy being out of power that when the person who's in there is messing up, you blame them and you think that the other guy can do better. You don't think about what the offensive line's doing. You don't think about the defense being terrible. You don't think about the coach being bad. You say, well, let's get the backup quarterback in there and see what he can do. And he stepped into the same mess, and things are just as bad. Because there was nothing magical about it, but it seems better. The grass is always greener on the other side. So when you see the trouble and the missteps the Biden administration has had, I've even heard black folks say, like, we're looking at $3-4 a gallon gas, and I tried to get some chicken wings yesterday. A bag of chicken wings was $30 if you can find them. When you're looking at supply chain issues and the seeming, we still have COVID restrictions and mandates and disinformation and misinformation out there. And so it's easy for people to say, like, well, hell, things were just this bad under Trump, but at least things weren't as expensive, so bring back Trump. Because it's kind of a one-to-one connection, not looking at the externalities involved. For people who are kind of tuned into politics, it's hard for us to realize that the other 85-90% of the population got other stuff to do. So they're not worried about Joe Manchin or Christian Sinema. They don't care that Mitch McConnell is being an obstructionist. You blame it on the person at the top. And this is what I've been saying for months, that the Biden administration has to concentrate on putting wins on at all costs. You gotta do whatever you need to do, because now you've given people like Raphael Warnock nothing to run on for re-election. You've given House members nothing to run on for re-election if you're in a progressive district. Imagine if you're in one of these young progressives in their first re-election race. You ran on the Green New Deal, student loan reform, criminal justice reform, voting rights, and infrastructure spending. What do you say when you go back to your constituents when you say none of the things we ran on got done? How do you get those young voters who turned out in record numbers from campuses around the country to turn back out again without that specter, that boogeyman of Trump looming over them? What do you do when you are going back to African American voters, which we're now seeing Biden have to do? And you're not able to say anything except symbolic things. Or you're going to run on, well, we make Juneteenth a holiday. Do you think that's going to drive people out to the polls? So there's a lot of work that got to get done. And Trump, by being the backup quarterback, all he has to do is make the point to his base, look, gas wasn't $4 a gallon when I was president. You could buy chicken wings when I was president. We stood up to Russia when I was president. We didn't have all these policies and all this cancel culture and stuff. You could do what you want, say what you want. It's kind of like when you get divorced and the non-custodial parent just shows up with a football and some toys and says, let's go play, forgetting the mom's been putting food on the table, keeping the lights on, buying sweaters, homework, all that stuff. Well, he got toys and we're about to go play, so that's all that matters. And so Trump is setting these things up. He's telling his people, if I'm indicted, I want y'all to riot in every city around the country. He's told his supporters that if you do anything when I get back in office, I will pardon you. I will let you out. He's making the case to get his base out there at a point in time when the Democratic base is more depressed and downtrodden than ever because they're fighting within themselves. So the Biden administration has to take this seriously and use every tool, every lever, every power of the federal government to be able to put points on the board. cancel student loans by executive order and let the courts sort it out.
Yeah.
Because at least you'll get the news cycle on your side. Do criminal justice reform out of the White House and let the courts sort it out, because you'll have the news cycle. You have to start doing things like that just to get those points up there, because that's what Trump did when he said he was building the border wall. Yeah, border wall was never getting built, but he at least made it seem like that. So they have to take some strategies on those lines. Otherwise, you run out of clock before you put any points up.
All right. Everybody, pay attention. Pay attention. Let's talk about saving our homes on the other side of the break on the Santita Jackson Show. Robert, you and Dwight are brilliant. Hope I have a show once it's all over, but you were brilliant.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Did you
I
really?
enjoyed it.
Why did you enjoy it?
I did, because it's right on point, and I've been saying that. I'm like, they keeping him relevant. Like, if you think about it, he has been more relevant than actual COVID prevention. So if media actually put that emphasis in people cleaning their hands correctly, how to wear a mask correctly, opposed to telling us, and then too, think about the money that they spent trying to do that impeachment. Like, that money went to Congress so they can be there to run stuff. But at the end of the day, like, we lost out on money that could have been going to people, and we still struggling to get stuff passed. So it's like, I look up and absolutely they are right. They have kept him relevant across the board. They want to know what he's doing all the time. And as a result of that, like they said, it don't matter if he do something or good or bad. It just amplifies like what it is that he's able to do. The fact that he had the issues with Ukraine or Russia. Now everybody's thinking about that. And all you see on social media is, oh, well, they wasn't coming for us when Trump was in office. Like, this is some of the stuff that you actually see on there, you know, in regards to the issues and stuff. And then it makes it look even worse because it was all of this criticism about how he handled this pandemic. And let's be honest, the Biden administration not doing any better in regards to how it's handled. In fact, it's gotten worse, you know, and another thing, people not sure if these mandates would have been put in place without some more due diligence being done if he was still in office. And this is not me saying I'm supporting him, but it's all these questions that you do have to kind of wonder about based off of how things are going now, based off of the direction they were headed in before he left office.
And let me tell you something. Somebody's supporting him. People are not telling the truth. People going to those booths. I've met plenty of Black people who have said to me, when they find out that I'm not going to beat them up or, become, confrontational, they're like, well, now, I did vote for him. I'm like, wow. I'm like, really? He got some votes out here. So people need to stop playing that game. He's got some support, and his support is rising. Dwight, are you still there?
I am.
Okay, just very quickly, because I'm going to let you, and Robert, you still there?
Well, hang on, Miss Jackson. I'm getting voicemail on David Hochberg.
Okay, well, just continue to reach out to it.
Okay.
Okay, it's all good.
Yeah, well, so Santita, I think part of the issue is that a lot of particularly news editors, comedy writers, talk show hosts just got so lazy during the Trump years because the Trump administration was abnormal. It produced news every day. It produced something to talk about every single day. The Biden administration is back to a normal, boring administration. I don't know who the Trump, education secretary is off the top of my head, but I know for Trump it was Betsy DeVos. I don't know who the White House doctor is under Biden, but I know under Trump it was Ronnie Jackson, because they always had something crazy going on with the cast of characters. And with them gone or technically out of power, these folks don't know how to replace that content. And so they have to go back to the well, and that's what Trump has been counting on, and that's what Trump wins with. He doesn't need Twitter. We have Anderson Cooper talking about him every single night, 5 nights a week.
But, also, at the end of the day, he supports a corporatist agenda, right? And so the corporate media he just supports one particular side of it. You've got you've got the so-called popular, you've got the populist side, then you've got the Democratic side, then you've On the left. You got the left wing populists, the right wing populists. You've got the libertarians. He's representing, he culturally a particular point of view, but this is just very, very interesting to watch, and I don't see the Democrats with a strategy. I mean, as you and Dwight have been saying, it's like, where's the strategy, you guys? I mean, because this guy never stopped running. Reverend doubled his vote totals between 84 and 88. He went from about 3.5 million votes to 7 million votes. Guess what? He never stopped running. If you're in the game, you're in the game. And I just don't, I don't see what these, like you said, executive orders. Let the court sort it out. Give me an executive order on voting rights, on Medicare for all. Oh, I know Big Pharma and the medical industrial complex won't like it. I don't care. This is what your people sent you. 80 million people sent you there for that. Not to cut a deal with Senator Sinema and Manchin. And you should have stripped them of their committee assignments.
And because Biden still feels like for some reason, it's probably mostly ego, that he can peel off some of Trump's base. And that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. And by appealing to Trump's base, he's forsaken his own.
Okay, 1 minute.
And so he has no deliverable.
None.
He has nothing to negotiate from, because rather than put
quickly, Dwight. I'm coming up.
Rather than impose his will on his party and force them to give the deliverables that we can negotiate from, he forsakes them, tries to appeal to the Trump's base, and ends up with neither. So he has no deliverables on his side.
Yep.
And is not able to appeal in the Trump's base.
30 seconds.
On the Republican side.
Well, I mean, there you have it. Do we have David Hochberg up yet?
Still not yet. It's
Okay.
going straight to voicemail.
Continue to call. Let me know.
Will do.
Okay, thank you so much. You can just put it in my ear. Let me know that he's there.
For that.
10 seconds.
We ain't talking about voter suppression either,
No.
and how that's going to play into all of this.
Oh, that's the plan. That's the plan. You all stay until I get David Hochberg up. Hold on, please. I'm coming up, everybody.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. And guess what, everybody? It's Lorraine Hayes' birthday. Everybody, give our sweet Lorraine some love today. Happy birthday, Lorraine. Happy birthday. I'm Santita Jackson. We've been talking about President Trump 2024. That's right. The soft launch has begun, everybody. Did he ever stop running? Call me about that, 773-763-9278. What about getting your home together? Have you tried to get your home appraised, particularly if you're African American? The appraisal, you always get undervalued. I mean, it's unbelievable. We're going to be talking about that in just a couple of minutes. And of course, Dr. Max Wolf, what about these abysmal employment numbers? And what about the Great Resignation? What's going on here? What is really, 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 really going on as you're watching nurses leave hospitals and they're getting paid big bucks just to go from place to place, and they're still licensed. I mean, teachers are now doing that. It's a lot going on right here. And we want you to call us at 773-763-9278. And where are you calling? WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, took over the mantle of Air America. Yes, that's what we used to be, but now we've evolved into WCPT and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want to hear your voices today. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Let's get some of these headlines out the way so we can get on with the rest of the show. In Chicago, we'll have a high of 27 degrees. Snow showers. Did you survive the winter storm yesterday? Well, we're going to get some more snow today, and please be careful with that snow because it is wet, it is heavy, and there is ice underneath here in Chicago. Minneapolis, St. Paul, that's all I can say. It's 2 degrees above zero. At least that is what you're going to get to today. I don't think you're there yet. The Dow closed up 224 points. The Nasdaq closed up 71 points, and the S&P 500 closed up 42 points yesterday. In the NBA, the Timberwolves will be playing the Pistons tonight, and the Bulls will be playing the Raptors. Last night, Chicago and Minneapolis-St. Paul faced off in hockey, and the Wild were triumphant 5-0. They shut Chicago out. Better luck next time, Chicago. More than 100 million people are still under a winter weather advisory. Winter weather alerts across at least 25 states, crossing, from the Mexican border through New England. Massive winter storms pummeled much of the United States. More than 20 inches in Colorado Springs, more than a foot of snow in parts of Indiana and Illinois. Right here, just in the Chicago area, we got a lot of snow, everybody. 2,300 flights were canceled and thousands have been canceled today. Everybody, check and see if you have to fly today, if you're going to be able to fly today. And please, please, please be careful. Please be careful. So many of us are without power right now. President Biden is sending 3,000 U.S. troops to Poland, Germany, and Romania to bolster NATO countries in Eastern Europe as tens of thousands of Russian troops amass along the Ukraine border. And Pentagon spokesman John Kirby, the press secretary, said these forces, the American forces, are not going to fight in Ukraine. We will see. Coronavirus truckers are protesting. That's right, up there with you, Dave Dowling up in Canada. They're protesting COVID-19 health restrictions by staging a blockade of 18-wheelers in Ottawa, in the capital. Police have declared the week-long assembly an unlawful occupation of the country's capital, and they're looking at every single option, quote, including military aid, close quote, to bring the situation to an end. The truckers are part of what they call the Freedom Convoy and are protesting a recent mandate requiring drivers entering Canada to be fully vaccinated or face testing and quarantine requirements. We will see how that all works out. The National Archives decided yesterday that it will turn over former Vice President Mike Pence's records to the committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol as early as next month, after former President Donald Trump said he wanted to keep secret more than 100 documents. And as we're looking at what's going to happen with Jason Van Dyke, the former Chicago police officer who killed and was convicted of killing Laquan McDonald, who is about to be released from prison, what will happen? The NAACP, Congressman Bobby Rush, Rainbow Push, Reverend Jesse Jackson, so many people all across the country and around the world are asking for Jason Van Dyke to be prosecuted by the Department of Justice. Well, if what's happened to Tamir Rice is it portends what might happen, that just might not happen. The mother of Tamir Rice said, shame on them. Why? Because the Department of Justice, the Biden Department of Justice, sent her a letter saying that they will not reopen her son's case. There is not enough evidence. That 12-year-old boy, you remember, who was killed by the police. They shot him first and asked no questions later. Everybody, we've been talking about how you can save your home, how you can purchase a home. Do you have good credit? Do you have no credit? Have you had some financial difficulties? Well, if you're interested in purchasing a new home or refinancing your existing home, we've got help for you. Team Hochberg, 855-563-2843, 855-56-DAVID. I think that might be easier for you to remember, 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. You need to call them if you want to secure a VA loan or reverse mortgage. You need to call Team Hochberg. They are your trusted local lender. Pete recently posted a 5-star Google review after saving over $800 a month, everybody. That's almost $10,000 a year after completing a cash-out refinance with the help of Team Hochberg. And so he said, quote, they're a great lender. He heard that David Hochberg was giving advice on a radio station, WCPT, I'm sure, and many others. And he said it sounded too good to be true. He said, but his team was amazing. They surprised him. He said a big shout out to Mark Zinner. Very responsive. They made it happen. And they saved him almost $10,000 a year, $800 a month, everybody. 200 5-star reviews by typing Team Hochberg, HOCBERG. Find out who they are, everybody. Go to 56david.com. Call them at 855-56 They've got great customer service, and they can help you keep your home or get a home. And, we're seeing so many people who are losing their homes, who are now being put out of their rental properties because they just don't have any money. They don't have any money. Rents are up by more than 30%, and in many cities, forcing millions to find another place to live. In the meantime, we still have this huge home ownership gap between white and black Americans. Indeed, it is larger today in 2020 than it was 50 years ago. What is going on? How could we get our money? We welcome to the show David Hochberg. How you doing, David Hochberg?
I am tremendous, Santita. How are you?
I'm doing great. Tell me, what do you do? Because we see, I was reading a Washington Post article about how one home can impact the lifetime of a family. It can really be the cornerstone of Americans' wealth. What do you do, and how do you help us to get our homes or keep them?
It's the fastest way to grow wealth in the United States and has been for over 100 years. And what do? I help listeners enhance their credit if they have no credit. I help listeners secure new mortgages if they have a bad mortgage. Bad mortgage meaning we still have listeners out there with rates in the 5s and the 6s, even though we've seen a little uptick in the mortgage rates over the past 12 months. It's still at historical lows. Right? Mm-hmm. I talk to 60, 70, 80-year-olds all the time that said, Don, when you were graduating college, high school in the 80s, I had a 15 or I had a 17, I had an 18% mortgage, and we thought that was great back in the day. So I help listeners is basically what I do. I bring sunshine to their lives in terms of education for those listeners that don't know anything about credit, or those listeners that have got Uncle Bob or Aunt Sally that are giving them horrible information and advice about credit, like carrying balances on your credit cards is a great thing to improve your credit. That whoever tells you that, Santita, that aunt and uncle should not be trusted for any type of financial advice anytime in the future, because that is horrible information. So,
well wait a minute. Why is that horrible information? Someone just told me that.
Oh, that's why? Because number one, what I didn't know this until I had lunch with the president of TransUnion Corporation, one of the top 3 agencies that control and report your credit. He heard me on the radio. He called me up. He's located downtown Chicago. We had a coffee and lunch. He's like, every time. So if you charge something in December, right? You buy Christmas gifts or holiday gifts in December, and when the bill comes in January, if you don't pay that credit card off in January in full, you get charged interest on every single charge that you make on that credit card until the December balance is paid off, until the previous month's balance is paid off. The other thing is, number one. Number two, your credit scores are based upon your credit utilization, your listeners' credit utilization. What does that mean? That means if you have I'm going to keep it simple. You have a $1,000 credit card limit and you have $900 against it in terms of outstanding credit because you went out and bought $900 worth of product. You're at 10% capacity utilization on that card, which means you only have another $100 to spend, which means you're at 90% capacity on that card. Anytime you exceed 25 to 30% capacity on any credit card, your credit scores start to decrease. So whoever tells you to carry balances on your credit cards, do not listen to them for any type of financial advice, because that is horrible advice. I recommend that if your listeners can, and I'm not naive because I know a lot of listeners are hurting out there financially, but instead of waiting for the credit cards to hit at the end of the month, go online every Friday if you get paid weekly, or every other Friday if you get paid bi-weekly, and chip away at that credit card debt. Pay it down as much as you can. If you have money in the bank, if you're fortunate enough to have money in the bank, charge whatever you're charging, a couple $100 a week if that's what you charge. And I call it the 4 T's, Santita: toothpaste, toilet paper, tampons, transportation. Just the base. Put it on a credit card, go on it Friday and sweep it down if you can pay it off in full. What does that do? that reduces your credit card exposure to 25%. Remember I said earlier, once you cross over 25 to 30% capacity, your credit scores start going down. This way, if you can and have the financial wherewithal, I understand that a lot of listeners are struggling, but if you have the money and you can chip it down or pay it off in full every week, that will make your credit scores shoot up and give you a great base to go forward.
So can people call you
Yeah.
and just say, look, I need help. I don't even know what question to ask. I don't know what to do. Can you help me?
Yes.
Okay.
I get those calls. Listen, I love those calls because I just lost 50 pounds, right? And as a fat guy for the past 55 years, I came out fat, right? I was born overweight.
Watch that. I've lost 200 pounds. Watch that.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, it's how difficult that is. I made the dedication. I'm tired of being overweight, unhealthy, and carrying all this fat around. So I made the dedication. I went on diet, lost 50 pounds. I know the struggle. I know how tough it is. It's the same thing. Quitting smoking, quitting drinking, building credit. You need to have a mindset that you want to get it done, right? I've been losing the same 50 pounds for the past 30 years, right? And I finally made a dedication and commitment, and I lost, right? Same thing with credit. Same thing with anything you want to do. If you have no credit at all, I've teamed up with an unbelievable group at BMO Harris that has a credit builder product that I found out about. Been doing mortgages 21 years. I found out about it last year. It is an amazing product. We probably have 15 to 20 listeners in that product right now, getting a good base, building the foundation so they can go and purchase a home in the future. And some of them have such horribly damaged credit that they can't refinance out of the horrible loan that they went into years ago. So we're not only helping listeners establish a base, a great foundation to enhance their credit, build credit so they can purchase a home, we're also helping listeners out there that are credit challenged, credit damaged, or credit ghosts, don't have any credit at all. And we've seen that numerous times a month. We send them over to BMO Harris. They have a credit building program that will help listeners build their credit or enhance their credit so they can refinance out of the garbage loans they're in.
Call me at 773.
I love that. That gets me so much joy. Is taking somebody with a 550 credit score, getting them into the 600, and being able to either refinance their home or buy a new home, right? Because you can tell they're working, you can tell they're motivated, you can tell they're like, oh my God, I've never had credit. Oh my God, my credit score's never been out of the 580s in the past decade, right? And I'm just like, let's do it, let's go. It's on you.
Well, do you know what you need to call? 855-56-DAVID. What did you say? If you're a credit ghost, how did you put it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So some listeners are scared of credit, right? Some listeners think that the credit cards are what's causing them to overspend, which we all know it's a mental condition, right? Overspending is just as challenging as any other drug, right? And they use those credit cards and look at those credit cards as bad, or they saw their aunt and uncle get in credit card trouble and they don't want to go down the same path. And I go, you have a debit card, right? They're like, yeah, I use a debit card all the time. I go, you just have to change your spending pattern, right? If you have a debit card and use your debit card to go to the grocery store to put a tank of gas into your car or whatever, right? It takes it right out of your account. They're like, yeah. I go, you get zero credit score value, any credit score credit, if you will, on a debit card. The debit card is the worst thing that ever happened to borrowers because they rely on the debit card. And I get it. If there's not enough money in your account, you get rejected and you got to put something back. I've been there. I've been there myself. I understand that, right? On credit, same thing I was saying earlier. Spend what you can. Afford every week, put it on a credit card on Friday. Why Friday? Because it's Friday. And you know it's going to be the weekend the next day, so you never forget a Friday. Go online and sweep it and pay it off. Your debit card's not earning you any type of credit to enhance your credit. So the ghosts are those listeners out there that are afraid of credit, those listeners that haven't used any credit, that pay for cash for everything in the past 10 years. But, which is fine. Okay, if you don't want to have any credit extended to you, and you don't want to go and get a credit card or a car loan or a mortgage, then don't take out any credit. All right, but a lot of employers are checking credit for credit worthiness to make sure, especially in the financial industry, because it's been shown if you have bad credit, they don't want you around money because you might take their money in order to pay off your debt. So a lot of different factors go into credit scores, and that's why it's important. It's so important. Everything that you do in your everyday life is credit scores, and I'd love to help your listeners enhance that.
Absolutely. But I have someone who has another question for you. Pastor Marshall Hatch heard that you were going to be here today. He's from the New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church in Chicago. And he brought forward an issue that you and I have discussed, David, something that you were not aware of, but it's now just beginning to be fair. It's now just beginning to make it in corporate media. That is, Black people who get their homes appraised for various and sundry reasons, to get refinanced or whatever. They're always undervalued. Pastor Hatch, you're speaking with David Hochberg. I've got about 2.5 minutes.
Hello, Mr. Hochberg. Marshall Hatch here. Thank you for all of this good information on credit and financial literacy, really. There is the issue. There was recently a story locally about the ways that African-American homes are underappraised in communities, and some of us are familiar with the way race and real estate kind of intersect, so that literally the blacker a community is, the lower the value, and that a lot of what is in the appraisal industry is very subjective. And I just had a recent experience with it in Austin here, where basically if the homeowner's Black, that is probably consciously or subconsciously, played into the decisions of the appraiser. And so that is a real issue. And I just had that conversation with a couple of folks involved with Chase, where I've done banking. So I was wondering, were you familiar with that? The race plays into appraising. Yeah.
I've got 2 minutes before we go.
Yes, and I thank you for that. And the last time I was on, Santita and I talked afterwards. I was not aware of how prevalent that was. And right after we got off last time I was on last year, at the end of last year, there was that CNN article and a CNN story about the African-American Black couple in California that had their house appraised for $300,000-$400,000 less. It is a gigantic problem with what I found out, Pastor. And what I would love to do, and the best way to change that is to bring awareness to the appraisal community, and also bring awareness to the communities that are having the problems and turn properties around that are sitting dormant. Because those properties that you're talking about, Austin, it is an absolute travesty what's going on with the homes in Austin, right? And if we could take those homes that are empty and convert them into livable homes, which I know we can, because I got the backing of BMO Harris. They're willing to bring in money into those communities and turn those homes within those communities throughout Chicago. It's not just Austin. I mean, you can go up and down in every area of the 606 zip codes. There are depressed housing areas, and I would love to bring awareness to that. I would love to help you within your communities and other pastors out there bring the education and help turn that around. And it's wrong what's going on with these appraisers.
I want you to call him at 855-56-DAVID. A lot of people are responding here. 855-56-DAVID, or go to 56david.com. Well, you know what that means, David Hochberg. You know that means you need to come back very soon.
You know when, and I'll be there.
Well, we need to talk about credit, Pastor Hatch. We need to talk about how to convert these single-family homes, or these 2 flats, or these 3 flats, into livable properties. While all millions of people are losing their rental properties, there's money out here, Pastor Hatch. There's money out here. We just don't know where it is. We don't know how to access it. And this is what David Hochberg is going to do. So we're going to make this happen. We're going to have you right back in the coming days to talk to us about credit. Do you think we need to have that conversation? I've got about 15 seconds, Pastor Hatch.
Absolutely. No, all of the great information about the debit card, for example, you get absolutely nothing for it. It's just by changing the card and paying off as you would a debit card, you're going to get a great benefit on your credit score. That's just absolutely.
Yes, sir. It's that easy. I mean, just those little steps, Pastor. And I'll bring that awareness and that education to whoever wants to have me into their communities and share this information.
We're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen. Stay right here. We've got Dr. Max Wolf here talking to us about these abysmal unemployment numbers. What is going on, everybody? We're going to turn it around right here on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. David Hochberg, I want to thank you for being with us today. But as soon as I told Pastor Hatch, did he leave already?
Yeah, just now.
Oh, wow. Well, Pastor Hatch,
I'm still there.
I'm glad that he and I just going forward are going to be talking about these things. And I want to know what you think we need to be discussing. Because he was saying that, we have these abandoned. Can you call David back real quick, Matt? Well,
it's not exactly that. Well, that's not entirely the issue.
Give me a minute.
No, that's okay. Get everything. We'll do. I'll do that offline. But I'm sorry. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Pastor, I'm sorry. You were saying.
Yeah, I'm still. No. The issue of the appraisal community itself is one that's going to have to be engaged. It's not just the abandoned house. That's not the problem where I'm at.
Oh no, we're looking at we're looking at a whole range of issues, not just appraisals. We're looking at converting these homes that are in our community into rental properties that people can have. But he has a whole range of products that he is able to sell. That is to say, looking at appraisals. That's one of them. Building your credit. That's one of them. People really got smashed up in this pandemic, but people were struggling before that. Let's be honest. So with all of that,
never recovered from 2008. I mean,
thank you.
2008 was devastating on Black wealth.
So he wants to talk about that and find out how we can recover our money. So that is something that I really want to do.
Mr. Hochberg back on.
Okay, Mr. Hochberg.
Financial literacy.
Yes. Hi,
David. Just very quickly. I was letting him know that you have I was letting Pastor Hatch know that very quickly you have a whole list of products that you are able to that you work through. I mean, and dealing with appraisals is one of that. What Pastor Hatch would like for you to do is to bring really, we need to get into that community and talk about that. And we want to do that through you. We also want to talk about building our credit, the debit cards, all of these things. And just going forward, we would like to talk with you about that. Is that okay?
100%. How about this? What if I bring a owner of an appraisal company that we use with me to answer all your questions? Would that be helpful?
That would be helpful. Pastor Hatch, you want to do that in the next couple of weeks?
Oh, absolutely. Just set it up. Yeah,
okay.
I'd be glad to do it.
We'll do it next week. Okay?
You got it. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Hatch. Thank you, Santita, for the opportunity. Look forward to meeting with you guys.
Okay, right, Pastor Hatch, you'll be at the center of that.
All right.
Okay, because you have all those mansions on the west side, all these beautiful homes that are undervalued.
1 minute.
Should I say they're underappraised? And then somebody else comes in.
Underappraised.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Somebody else comes in and they oh my gosh, they get it for pennies on the dollar. And then we look up and we're in a gentrified community. That's not going to work. Do we have? I'm sorry.
I'm on Midway Park. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm moving real fast. Do we have Mrs. Wells on?
We do, as well as Dr. Wolf.
Wonderful. And Dr. Wolf, we've been talking about home ownership and so many other issues as we're going to go into our money. Sending everyone much love. So I got to get on to this next topic. Whew.
All right. Thanks, guys. Look forward to working with you.
Well, looking forward to working with you. Wait a minute. Chaparral, did you have a question for David Hochberg?
10 seconds.
No, not at this time, but I will be calling.
Okay. All right. Stand by.
I look forward to talking with you as well. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you. God bless.
Can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. It's the bottom of the hour on WCPT on Thursday on the Santita Jackson Show. You know what that means. We've got Dr. Max Wolf coming up in just a hot second. It's Thursday, February 2022. Did you survive the storm last night? We're going to get some more snow here in Chicago today. And just, it might look like it's like we're recovering, and we are. But remember, underneath this, remember it was raining the day before yesterday? It's freezing now. And so that's frozen. So please be careful. Wear your boots. Don't wear any heels today. Don't do that. And just please be careful. Step lightly, as they say. Be careful, everybody. And so, as we go into unemployment, I just don't know what to make of these numbers. I don't know what to make of any of this. I really, really don't. And people are really struggling, the Great Resignation, all of that. But that's why we leave that to Dr. Max Wolf. As we come to you, we've got celebrations by us, and I cannot wait to get my vittles. Chaparral Wells.
Yes, Santita, and I'm glad that the weather has cleared up a bit so I can assure you that you'll have them on Friday. Listen, Santita, Celebrations by Us is still working. We are still catering. Whether it's your greens or green beans, mac and cheese, mozzarella, Cajun pasta, our caramel cake, our banana pudding, our peach cobbler, whatever it is that you need for your catering needs, don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546, or also hit us up on celebrationsbyus.org. And we have some exciting news that this year is the first annual Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation Charity Ball. It's going to happen on March 5th from 6:30 to 9:30. So don't hesitate to give us a call for the charity ball. And you can also purchase your tickets on eventbrite.com. And the keyword is the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation. We're actually raising money to send our kids to college, as well as also provide supplies for the school year and our Christmas toy giveaway. So these are important causes that we are helping our community, keeping Courtney's memory alive. So give us some support and support this charity ball. Thank you, Santita.
How can we get tickets to the charity ball?
Yes, you can get them on Eventbrite, and the keyword is the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation.
Okay, well, send me that billboard so I can put it up, okay?
Thank you, Santita. I appreciate your support.
Oh, you got it all the way. Celebrations by Us, everybody. 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. I will be getting my greens and my string beans and some other things tomorrow. Yes, I can freeze them and just eat well. Oh, this woman can cook. Everybody, of course, we've got Dr. Max Wolf with us, brilliant economist, talking to us about, well, this is the headline, Pat. I don't know what U.S. employment tanked by 300,000 jobs in January. What does that mean with the backdrop of this great resignation? I mean, even NASDAQ did a big story on it. What's going on?
So it's a good question. I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer it, but I think we need to start discussing it as a shift in the labor market that probably, to the point made on this air many times by many folks other than myself, is that a lot of things were probably pulled forward that were happening anyway, but accelerated and made a little bit more transparent, a little more clearer by COVID, as much as just being a product of COVID. But we know a couple million people, depending on how you count it, maybe 3 to 4, seem to have, at least thus far, exited the labor force without coming back. So that's, not meaningless. It's a significant number. And then I think there's a lot of people working part-time or trying to start little businesses or in the gig economy who used to be more fully counted and included in the economy, right? And this has been a move toward informal work and self-employment has been going on for quite some time, decades really, but it's really accelerated, I think, since 2008, 2009, since the Great Recession. And I think we may have seen a real acceleration of that, sometimes by choice, sometimes not by choice, in the sort of COVID waves here. But the headline numbers, at least from the other day, were that some of the private companies that estimate payroll growth, because we're trying to figure out what the story was employment-wise in January 2022, the first month of this year, took their numbers way down, possibly even to a decline. And we had been seeing weakening actually in December already, so that's a kind of a worsening of a trend that was in place. This morning, the jobless claims numbers were actually less than expected, but for our purposes, because we're more interested in studying the impact of the economy on people's lives than kind of updating runs on numbers and factoids, it looks like we're setting up for an interesting moment here, because most of the assistance, at least to lower income folks, the bottom, say 70% of the income strata, is over. The eviction moratoriums are rolling off, right? The price inflation has made basic household goods and groceries and gas and some other things, staples, kind of expensive. Wages are a bit up, but not up enough to kind of probably compensate for the price increases, or not much more than those. So there's a big squeeze here, right? And if the hope was that the labor market would take care of it, it doesn't look as robust as it was. Now, there's reason to be somewhat optimistic there, that some of what happened is Omicron slammed into the labor market, as it did to so many places in people's lives, very quickly. But while it was a huge spike of a month or two up, it's coming down the rates again pretty quickly too. So that's probably a positive. But yeah, it looks like late 2021, early 2022, as a lot of you probably felt in your bones or saw, as you walked to the bus in the morning, or were at work, or getting into your car, or scraping the ice off the car if you're in Chicagoland, or whatever you're doing, you sort of felt things weren't going great. Well, you were right.
But I'm trying to find out, there's some cognitive dissonance, at least on my part. The unemployment, U.S. employment tanked by 300,000 jobs, and yet we're continuing this discussion about the Great Resignation. Can you distinguish between the two?
Excuse me. Yeah, look, so a lot of people quit their jobs. I think there's another bigger issue. So I think the unemployment numbers we have, they've always had issues with them, and they were always kind of designed to underreport unemployment, because governments and politicians and decision makers don't like to be confronted with high unemployment. No one likes high unemployment, but having numbers that understate it kind of makes it look like you're doing a better job of managing the economy. So it's always popular with people who are held to account for managing the economy. But it seems like maybe we haven't really modernized the unemployment measures as quickly as our economy has changed. And in fairness, that's difficult to do. But with so many people who are, so-called gig workers or sharing economy folks, and people trying to patch together a part-time job and a little business and selling things on eBay, or, making lunch for other people, or helping someone else bang out a dent in their car, that stuff doesn't tend to show up, and we don't see it very well. And so we have these very robust unemployment numbers, really good unemployment numbers, but it doesn't really feel like that out there. And, just to remind people, you're not unemployed if you work part-time, even if you don't want to. You're not unemployed if you haven't looked for a job in the last 4 weeks, even if you need one and don't have one. And there are patterns of who gets underrepresented in the samples as well. So there's some bias in sampling. So it's not a terrible measure, but I think the economy may have changed faster than how we measure the economy, if that makes any sense.
What do you mean it changed faster? How has the economy changed? Was it COVID? Was it the pandemic that changed the economy? I just had one of my guests on who said, wait a minute, we never recovered from 2008, particularly the Black community. We started losing homes at the turn of the century, and it accelerated in 2008, and we've not come back.
So the bottom 60-70% of the U.S. by income hasn't recovered from 2001, 2008, or 2020 fully. And that's true white, Black, Hispanic, Asian.
Everybody.
Unreported.
Yeah.
It's the bottom 7 of 10. So it's also not a rounding error. It's not like a few people slip through the cracks. That's a crack so big that a few people get over the crack. as opposed to slip through the cracks, right? So, yeah, I mean, obviously that will always hinge a bit on how you define recover, right? But generally speaking, a lot of people haven't recovered. I think the economy, the way we measure it, a lot of these tools were developed in the 60s and 70s when the notion was that you'd kind of get a job and you'd have it for a long time, and the quality of that job would determine a lot about your financial quality of life because you'd have benefits in retirement tied to that job, and that you might move around a little bit, but probably not that much, and that maybe you would even be able to support other people with your income. I think if you fast forward, you're not going to stay at your job. They may not offer you benefits. If they do, those benefits may be not quite sufficient to retire or pay for health insurance without having it be health care, without having it be a pretty major drain. It probably won't cover eye or dental benefits at all, maybe high deductibles and issues with bills, even from the medical side, and the retirement kind of whatever you put away. And if you are like most people in the bottom 50, 60, 70% of the country, you don't really earn enough every month to survive. So putting away a lot of money is kind of, I mean, sure, there's always people who do it, but it requires kind of heroics. So it's not commonly done at high enough rate, right? So, yeah, what a job means isn't the same. And how people cobble together their income is they rent out a room in their house and they drive other people around in an Uber. And when they see something on sale, they buy a bunch of it and try to sell it on eBay or Craigslist. And you know what I mean? And then they're living with somebody who maybe they wouldn't mind if that person fell down an elevator shaft, but it cuts the rent in half.
Oh.
So like life is different, right? I'm not just speaking of my life, but the point is people are doing a lot of things to survive that these numbers kind of have this very white suburban middle class 60s, 70s economic picture. And every step you take away from that, because you're not white, because you're not suburban, because you're not, heterosexual married couple, because you don't live in the suburbs, because it's, for instance,
it's not 1960. It's not 1970.
Yeah, those details. Yeah, as you step away from that model, the model, while still earnest and trying and does shine a lot of light, it might become, the joke we always had as kids, and I'm sure this is all the more true in Houses of Color, was you'd watch these sitcoms, and they were always interesting, but, it took me till I was older to realize that was supposed to be a description of a reality you had. It was so far from anything a kid in New York City in an apartment building going to a public school in the 1980s and 90s would have seen that, to me, that was could have been Star Trek almost. Right? But if you're far away from that norm, then it didn't speak to you. But my point here is a little bit different, which is if the reality is far away from that norm, then some of the statistics may not fully grasp the underlying reality that they're targeted at. Not because there's anything kind of conspiratorial. I would say most of the people who work in these statistical agencies are quite technically competent, very cautious, careful to do good work, not partisan, and doing a good job. It's just maybe things haven't been modernized as quickly as the economy has changed because we've gone through a lot of waves of rapid sort of disruptive change.
Well, I'm not, I think I appreciate your saying that, because this is not about blaming them, these government workers, these people who really work so hard to make our lives function and be better. But there's
working in a statistical office of the government because they're addicted to platinum.
And listen, something's going on around my home today, because I sure am hearing a lot of alarms. Pardon me, everybody. Wow, there's a lot going on. But I'm concerned that when I see 300,000 unemployment, those numbers, but it doesn't feel on the ground. It feels far more desperate. This is the headline from the Washington Post just a few days ago. Rents are up more than 30% in some cities, forcing millions to move. I mean, now the average rent is $1,877. I don't know how many people who can afford that. I mean, it's just who are you talking to? Who are you talking about?
Well, people will pay what they have to pay to live inside until they're homeless, right? So you can kind of extort a fair amount because, hey, how'd you feel about sleeping inside tonight? It's always going to be kind of an interesting proposition for a lot of folks. So a lot of people we know are house poor. In other words, they pay so much for their housing that it basically impoverishes them, especially lower income folks and people in cities where just because their rents tend to be quite a bit higher in urban areas than they are in suburban and rural areas. But not always the case, but often the case. So we know there's a lot of housing poverty for sure, and that's gone up. I think maybe one thing that's interesting that you can see is that the COVID pandemic drove us apart physically and economically. So if everyone goes inside, and if they have some money, they pay other people to deliver them stuff, and they work from home, and they invest in the stock market and it shoots up, they kind of have a sense of, this is tough because I want to go out to eat more and I'm just doing takeout. And I miss flying to, vacation destinations and maybe seeing some relatives, especially if they're older. But that's kind of the reality for them. And other people have been huddled in a place hoping they can afford heat, waiting to possibly die from a disease they got by going to work. That's a pretty different reality, right? And so if folks are living those very different realities, and if we are locked in our own houses in our very segregated and apart neighborhoods, and segregated, sure, by race, but also very income segregated, right? Especially in suburban or sort of sprawly, modern Sunbelt cities where, people don't live all on top of each other like they might in older cities. I mean, I think it's been pretty easy for people to forget the reality of others.
Well, I mean, because the reality is this. Rents are shooting up 14% and more. I mean, they're shooting up when people know that people are out here struggling. They know. I mean, and mind you, every landlord is not some big landlord, some big landowner. You have some people, some middle-class folks, some upper middle-class folks, some folks are just striving, who bought these properties in the hopes that it would help them to make some money and move forward.
Or it's a retirement plan, or they live there and it's how they support themselves because they're disabled or retired or need an income supplement or helping kids or whatever. Yeah,
but there was no relief for them, Max. And I just see no relief for people because I'm trying to figure out with the great resignation, where did the workers, where are the workers going? Do they have health insurance? I mean, what's happening?
I mean, most of the folks would lose health insurance unless they have a spouse or if they're young enough, I guess could be on a parent or something. We do know a few things, right? So we know a lot of people are living with people who they're not married to. A lot of people are living with parents and relatives. Obviously you don't know exactly, but a lot of it looks like it might not be voluntary, i.e. they had to give up the other residence that they were in before, possibly because the rents went up and possibly because they lost their job. Or lost their job for a decent period of time. We're also starting to hear a lot of stories about people being fired for taking the day off to go get a COVID test or telling everyone they have COVID from the hospitality industry, which is notoriously a fickle employer. So, I mean, I think you've got a lot of people who are afraid to get sick but have to go to work to earn a living, and going to work involves a substantial risk of getting sick. And then they're not taken care of, per se, because they can fall through the health insurance cracks. And that's even people, middle-class people with jobs and all the rest. So, I mean, I think the sort of stingy, full of holes social safety net rears its ugly head in these moments, right, in a pretty kind of dramatic way. And there's also one way to think about it is if you're on the wrong side of what they sometimes call the digital divide, it can be pretty rough out there. If you can't work from home, if you can't do a lot of the things you used to do, you're not buying things with your credit card online, or you're not comfortable or not completely able to do that, or you had a bunch of side hustles to make a little extra money, and you lost those in your job at the same time, which is millions of people, that is brutal, right? Because then you lost your main gig and your side hustle. I mean, and you're not making money, and you're not, it's pretty rough, right?
And, I just don't think that the corporate media are capturing that. In fact, I know they're not. But when I'm seeing us fight over Build Back Better, personal infrastructure, I'm just trying to figure out this disconnect because people 300,000 workers, that doesn't even begin, that's not even the tip of the iceberg on the people who are not working or the people who are working and not making enough money. Americans are really struggling, Max. And I'm trying to find out from you what can be the way out. I mean, because we're in an election season. I mean, is there anything you think we need to be asking for? Because I'm trying to find out, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? Do you think that unemployment's going to turn around? I mean, where are we going?
Yeah, so I mean, we've tried to, or I've worked on projects to try to get a sort of measure of the difficulties in the lower end of the income sort. So we look at things like bankruptcies, vehicle repossessions, and evictions. Those kind of usually tell a story of folks who are in a tough spot, right? And the vehicle repossessions, everybody thought they were going to surge, but they didn't. But they're still pretty large, you know? So I think like 5,000 cars are repossessed every day, about 230 an hour. So if you're not used to looking at these numbers, it's not like a trivial number. For reasons that are kind of funny, I know, because they kind of scramble the racial assumptions a lot of Americans make. I always mention this when we discuss this. The two most repossessed vehicles in America are always the Ford F-150, probably because it's the best-selling pickup truck, and then the Chevy Silverado, which is the competitor. I always mention that to people because I think a lot of people have an idea that it's urban communities of color, and of course there are communities of color who no doubt. But, you know, when you think of the Ford F-150, maybe it's not the inner city that you immediately think of.
Nope.
I mean, again, I'm not trying to insult anyone. Pick your own vehicle, and obviously I'm stereotyping a bit myself there. But, yeah, I mean, I think...
No, but the point you're making is that white people are suffering. Because no one's talking about that.
I mean, just people who are not wealthy are suffering. Whether they have two arms or one, two legs or one, white skin or black skin, or they're Hispanic or Asian or Native American. I mean, people tend to forget that community because it's kind of small. But the Native American community has had a very tough run of COVID. High rates of severe illness and slow to get assistance that was much needed. And it's a community that's substantially not wealthy. Right, so it's a substantially poor community anyway. So yeah, I mean, lots of pockets of trouble, right? The other thing is one of the big things people use to figure out how well the bottom portions of the economy are doing tend to be applications for various assistance programs, and all those are off because they were made more generous and extended early in the COVID crisis, and then just they were shut down, but at different rates by different states in a political dispute. So getting good numbers out of that data is really hard. And then the other thing we tend to use a lot is the evictions, because it sort of speaks to a really tough time in people's lives. And then because we have the moratorium, we don't have numbers on that are very meaningful. We do know that home ownership is down a bit, right? So that's a sign that people are switching to being renters, right? Which usually means, you know, that they are having economic hardship that they used to own. Not always, but often, right?
Well, you know, in this last minute, what should be our takeaway as we're getting ready to hear more numbers with respect to unemployment or employment tomorrow? I mean, what's our takeaway? I mean, as going forward? Because everybody's saying we've got to break up, build back better just to get elements of it through. What do we need, Max?
Yeah, well, look, that's more of a tactical kind of debate people have, right? So, like, what's the best tactic to pass a piece of legislation? I mean, that probably isn't the province best of an economist, which is, I guess, what I am, so they say. But look, I think we have two sets of problems here. We have immediate problems that when we see really heart-wrenching cases tend to grab our attention about someone or some family or some children really in a very, very intensely hard situation.
Okay, got 30 seconds.
We have to we just have to decide if we're going to try to help people not fall through the cracks like this. And if we're going to stop blaming the people who do, or if we're going to pick them back up. And by the way, I'll always argue for picking them back up, and not because I'm a good person. You can attest to that, but because it's more efficient. and then they can rejoin the society. Yeah, but you don't need to be a good person. It's not moral. People who can rejoin the society and give back, that's always a good investment. And throwing people away, I don't think it's moral, but it's also a poor economic investment.
Everybody in, nobody out, everybody. Everybody in, nobody out. We can change the world. We can work our way through this, and we need to. We need to. Everybody, it's been a joy being with you today. Oh, every day. You just you light up my life, as Debbie Boone used to sing. And happy birthday to you, sweet Lorraine. Happy birthday. And everybody, sending you much love today. Everybody, Blu-ray Hannah down in South Carolina. Stay warm. And check in on your neighbors. They might really, really need you. I love you, everybody. God bless you. Stay warm, stay safe. God willing, we'll be together again tomorrow.
Change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world. We can.
Oh, Max, you're just a jewel. You're just a jewel.
Thanks. I was ever looking at this eviction lab.
Oh,
it's pretty cool. So it's a data mapping.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good little project, actually. I mean, obviously the news that they're sharing isn't so upbeat, but like it does a good job of finding eviction data and then mapping it. So you can look up like the county or the town or the area that you're in and get an idea. Obviously, these numbers are all kind of off because of the bans for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But now the bans are rolling off, they're kind of interesting. And so, yeah, if you are looking for that kind of stuff, it is interesting.
Well, it is. Well, just very quickly, what piques your interest when you look at these numbers?
I don't think we have the numbers yet for the eviction roll-off. So we do in some places, like in South Carolina, where the bans came out earlier, right? Look, I think the inflation conversation is where you see the unhappiness with the economy, because it's less disconcerting to more conservative voices who are intent on kind of blaming Biden and also worried about inflation, because inflation erodes the buying power of wealth. And so wealthy people don't like inflation, right? And so when inflation hits, people talk about it. And so you get a conversation about it. And obviously it is important. It is a problem. And it does hurt lower income folks too, who struggle to buy what they need anyway. And if the price of things rises, it's obviously trouble for them. But yeah, I think you sort of see it in the intensity of the inflation conversation. Probably talks or hints at some economic suffering above and beyond what might show up in some of the other data. Just because the truth is that generally, for instance, food prices, there has been a big bump in the food prices, but generally food in the United States is very inexpensive. And the price of food in the United States has stayed very inexpensive. Now, not fancy, organic-y type food, but basic staples are pretty inexpensive in the U.S. Now, obviously, if they pop up a bunch in a short period of time, which happened, then that will be experienced by people as a big movement, which makes sense. But generally speaking, food is the amount of your income that you need to feed yourself a kind of standard, particularly maybe like a starchy, very traditional diet where the subsidies are concentrated, a lot of sweeteners and maybe subsidized meat products, is pretty cheap. So if it's showing up as really expensive, it's also probably a combination of a sudden increase in prices, which is a real thing and affects human psychology always, and some economic weakness for a lot of people, right? Same with gas. So gas has had a bump, and it is pretty volatile. Gas prices are pretty volatile. But overall, if you look at like a longer sweep of time, gas prices haven't gone up that much. And sometimes, especially in the U.S. the last bunch of years, talking about the price of things is a substitute for talking about the lack of wages. Because if your wages aren't rising, any increase in the price of anything you buy is devastating.
But so which takes me.
We're okay for wages.
But see, that brings me to a question that I'm hearing, because I just hear a lot of in corporate media, a lot of the anchors just throw off, great resignation, but wages are higher than ever. I'm like, but they're not working for people. What are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
Higher than ever can be a nominal thing, so be careful, right? So if you were making $8 5 years ago and you're making $8.10 now, wages are higher than ever, right? but the extra 10 cents an hour that you're earning probably doesn't cover a life that the price of which has gone up quite a bit more than that, right? So if your wages are going up 2 or 3% and what you buy is going up 4 or 5%, you're effectively getting a lower salary every year. But the number's higher, right? That's nominal, just $1 versus real, adjusted for what you have to buy. So, for instance, you started the show in part with a conversation about rents, especially urban rents in the bigger cities in the country. And there we know the rents are up about almost 20% from the lows, like earlier in the pandemic, so like 2 years, okay? So if your salary, the largest thing people tend to spend their money on is their rent, right? So if your salary goes up 5%, your rent goes up 15%, you are poorer as each month begins, right? In the beginning of the month, you write a check to the landlord or wire them money or drop it off or however you convey the payment, and then you're instantly poorer than you were last year for the rest of the month, even though your actual salary might be higher. So sometimes you get that disconnect, right, which is you can see someone go on TV and say, hey, wages are higher nominally, unadjusted for inflation. That could be true. It can be an accurate statement, if not terribly insightful. It could be accurate and truthful. But then you have people out there who are saying, well, you'll joke about too much a month at the end of the money.
Well, see, this is what Hannah Parker said. She said, the food is pretty inexpensive. Responding to your comment, she said, if you have access to it, poverty is expensive. It's true. But I think that when you travel outside of the United States and primarily to Europe, you see that American food is cheaper. That having been said, and I use that word carefully, that having been said, people are rationing their insulin, they're rationing their food. Folk are hurting out here, Max. And this conversation that is held.
Food in the U.S.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, we live here.
But medicine is not.
Yeah, but I'm just saying we live here.
Yeah, I know what I'm saying. If you look holistically.
Yeah, it's just everything's. People are going to the store. I go to the store and I'm shocked. I'm like, I didn't even get a whole lot of
eating healthfully.
Yeah, but please,
healthful food in the U.S. It's actually not cheap compared to other countries.
Forget about that.
Relatively less healthfully, then you have much cheaper, right? So that's another issue. Obviously,
no, that's real. Whole Foods is called Whole Paycheck.
That says food.
They call Whole Foods Whole Paycheck. It costs to be healthy and to live healthfully in this country. It shouldn't be. We can bundle up a Happy Meal, but we're not going to bundle up fruit and vegetables. We're not going to do that.
I know, but if you reincorporate the cost of medicine and days lost of work and feeling crappy from eating poorly, it's probably still more expensive. Like eating poorly, the cheap food is probably one of the most expensive shortcuts a lower income person can do. Understanding, all the advertising and the snack food industry and all the rest to tempt people in that direction and habit.
But they can't afford it. They can't afford it. They cannot afford it.
They can't afford not to either.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying if you literally, but Max, wait, honey, if you literally cannot afford it, people don't have money. They don't have it. They just don't have it. When the average rent is $1,877, most folks, that $18,000, that's $21,600. Now you tack on an extra $777 to that. That is a whole lot. That's more than $9,000. People don't have them. They don't have it. And we can't continue to put our heads in the sand, because that means when you have millions of people being put out of their rental properties, that is disrupting our children. That means they're moved out of their school districts. These young kids the Jackie Robinson Little League team that won the World Series, that had the World Series title stripped from them, because so many of those kids, their parents lost their homes in 2000 and 2001. They continued. This housing market collapsed underneath the Black community at the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s. That's what happened. And so these kids, parents, put them.
It was definitely tough. Like if you look.
It's horrible, but I'm just saying that's how people are living. Yeah. So something's got to give. Something's got to happen.
Yeah. my argument isn't to buy food you can't afford. What I'm saying is you're putting people in a very difficult situation, because if you do eat the cheaper food, which you can afford, which might be tasty and comforting and all the rest, then it's also what's available, what you're used to possibly. It is cheaper, but that's a bit of a mirage is the point, right? Because it's cheaper now, but a whole lot more expensive later, because, 20 years of food savings are gone in 2 days in a hospital.
Oh, and in a pandemic, I can get a free shot, but I cannot get coverage when if I need to go to the hospital. And whether I have been vaccinated or not, many people end up in the hospital.
Look, if
they
you need to go to
do.
the hospital, you might be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, but I'm just
it might be understaffed and full of people who
all
are
of
sick.
that.
It may literally be. We're starting to see those stories, or at least in some of the geographies. Hopefully, that's getting less bad now, with some reduction in the Omicron rates. But yeah, there were people who were trying to get into the hospital because they had, un-COVID related issues.
Yeah.
And they just, there was just no one in there. No beds, no staff, right? Because the staffing, these are other shows for another day. But
Absolutely.
The nursing crisis that was definitely existed pre-COVID has really kind of burgeoned out of control. That's a big issue. And I think people understand the education system is in a partial state of collapse too.
The teachers,
because of the strains of COVID.
But
the
also
teachers' aides, the folks who work in the schools.
See, this is where affirmative action becomes important. We spend more time trying to keep kids out of school. We keep trying to find a way to keep them deny them a seat at a university, not have free community college for 2 years. We spend more time trying to shut down people's dreams and aspirations and their actualization. So when we get on the other side of what the teacher who we would not let in school, or who we would not pay to go to school, he or she could not afford it, the doctor, the nurse, the LPN, and on and on and on and on it goes. This is where we're seeing this. And you know what? I'm saying we're the ones who bought it. We're the ones who did it. We're arguing about affirmative action when you need to be figuring out how to build more universities, because they're doing that all over the world. We're not doing it here. And we're paying the price, Max. And we should, until we learn the lesson.
Things went wrong there too, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people really excited about keeping foreigners out of the U.S. where
All
they
of
go to
it.
school and subsidize the university for everyone else. So when you remove them, you also make the university, less economically viable. That's not the only issue, but I mean, these things, there's a cumulative effect sometimes.
All of it. All of it. But I'm thinking, I think about letting these international students in, but I think about these native students here in the United States who are having their public schools closed down on them, who don't have teachers who are adequately prepared to teach them, to spot issues that they have, and on and on. We are playing games with people's lives, and we are poor for it. There is no community, there is no nation, no group that are so wealthy that they can afford to throw people away. And that is what we're doing every single day. Every single day. And shame on us for that.
I think people tend to forget. There tends to be forgetfulness too, that the schools in the U.S. are tasked with being much more than they probably should have to do, but much more than being a school, right? So they tend to be a point of distribution of nutrition, a point of care, a point of medical intervention, a little bit of a point of a social work check. And so if folks don't go to school, you tend to have a series of issues beyond just, not that that's not more than enough, but beyond just the lost classroom hours and stuff.
Absolutely. And I'm just saying, you know what? We can do right, not just better. We can do right, because this is wrong. This is just wrong. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. Stevie Wonder had a song out when we were trying to, oh goodness, fight apartheid in South Africa. At least some of us. Apartheid is wrong. It's just wrong. I mean, that was the refrain. It's wrong. It's just wrong. And we're living wrong. And so I'm just hoping that we will do something very different, Max, because
I'm hoping people will ignore all these issues and focus on the Super Bowl. Has worked for the last 50 years. So. It seems like a good bet.
You know what? See, you all,
or possibly celebrity gossip.
See, this is why
That's
I can't. This is what happens when I talk to Max for too long, everybody. It just, this is what happens to me. Like, I'm being very serious, and he'll say something that'll make me go, what? Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Max, you have anything you want to say to the audience before we go?
I feel like I'm sort of here to remind you that you need your panelist mute button to always be working. Keep fast on the draw. Look, no, I think that when the economy changes really quickly, the measures of it tend to lag, and they're still useful. And I don't think that, I'm not alleging any kind of conspiracies or anything like that. I think people are often, unfortunately, quick to jump to those explanations. But I do think that it becomes important to be, aware that there's a lag between the reality of the economy that we're trying to measure and the sort of how up to date our measures are. And it's a bit dangerous to forget that. I think, unfortunately, the unemployment numbers we have now, while still quite useful, and they're what we have, and so obviously you pay attention for sure. But we'll see again tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time when the new numbers come out. But there's a distinct possibility that as you go through the technical notes for those of us who do that, you'll see that lots of evidence that the headline numbers, 3.8%, 3.9%, whatever it is, a loss of 200,000 jobs or a gain of 200,000 jobs, they may not tell the story or speak to the reality that the majority of people live, right? And that's just the thing about numbers. They're very valuable. We can't understand things without them, but I always tell my students, and you may remember, we have 1.3 children per household officially, statistically, and if you get caught with 0.3 kids, you go to jail, and you probably should. So sometimes the numbers aren't the whole story.
Did you say probably should? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a good idea that you're not, out there wandering around.
Oh, my
if you have a lot of fractional kids around.
Oh. Yeah, you're right. Probably should.
I'm not sure I'm out in the skinny ranches on that one, but yeah. Okay.
No, but I think joy. It's always a joy to be with you. I cannot wait to hear what you've got to say. Oh, please. Are you kidding me? This is.
I don't. Me either. I have no idea what's coming next.
Max, I don't know what's coming next. That's the thing. I don't.
Me either.
And I don't know what's coming with you.
Keep it interesting.
Well, you do keep it interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do.
Yeah,
but
hopefully for the audience too, since they're the ultimate arbiter of these things. So hopefully the audience out there is still out there and has something of interest or gain from all this, if that's possible.
Well, I'll tell you, Paula Garcini Zipser, my dear sister, one of my original morning stars, she said, I see black and white people using food stamps at the supermarket equally. That's just one of the comments. And you're seeing pain out here. I keep telling everybody, it's just nobody is.
Yeah, the food bank business has not come down. So one of the things that's kind of interesting, obviously it's hard to know. So a lot of formal and a lot of religious organizations disperse food in food banks.
Yeah, we do it at Bush.
Yeah, reported exactly. So, it's not the most sort of precise thing to measure, but we can see that the demand on the food banks has not come as far down as you would sort of want to see in a recovery scenario that was really robust. You'd sort of hope at least that pretty quickly, if not immediately, into the recovery, that the sort of demand at food banks would be a good indicator. So if that was going down, that would be positive. But we haven't seen that yet.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like when I hear these numbers and I hear, when I hear the news readers in the morning, just, at 3 and 4 in the morning when I'm getting ready. Oh, and everything is, things are getting better. I said, I'm so tired of corporate media. And yes, I'm still on Facebook. I am so tired of it because you all are not serving us well at all. But you're serving the corporations because that's who you're supposed to serve. Oh, things are great. Things are getting better. And then I'm like, no, not from where I sit. I do know that they're building 2 new gun factories just outside of Atlanta. And I know you can't buy ammo anywhere. I do know that people are getting gunned and gadded up because they are fed up. I'm not saying that that's the way you should handle it because I don't believe in that. I'm from
through the whole pandemic,
nonviolent.
by the way.
I'm from the nonviolent space.
Gun sales were huge. We talked about this a year or so ago.
Were huge?
Because we saw the statistics. Like,
they are huge.
Yeah, I mean, they still are, but that was the whole pandemic. That's not. So what I think is important about that is people were buying tons of guns when the crime rate was way down during the pandemic. Now, I'm not saying the crime rate was down because we all became morally conscientious. We were locked in our house. We probably couldn't get out there and attack each other. But, for whatever reason, whether it's sort of good news or not, that their crime rates were way down, at least reported crime. You always want to be careful, who knows. But reported crime rates were way down. And people bought a ton of guns, and then the kind of lockdowns of official or unofficial began to roll off, and the gun crimes went berserk. So I'm sure no one cares, and I'm sure I'm going to bother a lot of people by saying this, but once again, more guns have made or less safety and more gun crimes. And I know it's not going to convince anyone, and I know it's not just the guns, because there are people around the world who have more guns than us and shoot each other with a lot less frequency. It's never just the guns, but to be fair. But once again, we got more guns and we shot each other a whole lot more.
Absolutely. But if we don't dig down and find out,
data point,
we've got to dig down and find out what's driving the violence. We're a violent culture. And when people in America when they feel that things are awry, that is what happens. That's why Dr. King was such a revolutionary figure, because he led a bloodless revolution. That is not how we get down in the United States. It's just not. That's not how we get down in the Western world. It's just not. So we're going to have to, as you say, grow up in our politics and come another way. Not only don't just look at the gun. That's the end of the problem. What's the hand that's holding the gun? Find out what's going on here. I'm not making excuses, but I do know.
Think that you can't blame just the guns.
No, we're together. I'm just saying, you know what, Max? Max, they had a carjacking 3 doors from my parents' home. Okay? My mother was coming out, pulling out the driveway.
Did you get tickets to that on Eventbrite, or was that by?
She didn't know what the heck was going on. She was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, because my mother saw someone, I mean, this was like 30 years ago. Someone was trying to take the car from the driveway. And my mother ran outside and read the young man the riot act, which was like not the thing to do. My father was just so undone when he got home. Yeah. He was like, what were you doing? Because somebody called the police, and the police got there, and they were like, Mrs. Jackson, you should step aside. She said, no, I'm trying to save this young man. My father was like, I do this for a living. Please don't do this.
That's brave of her.
My mother will do maybe that, but
super wise, but brave.
Yeah, she'll do it. And so, of course, she tried to intervene when the woman was getting carjacked, or the man was trying to grab her purse. I'm just saying, this is a very quiet neighborhood, and where these things, so-called, do not occur. But the thing is, they're happening everywhere. But this was like 30 years ago when they beat up Felix Rohatyn and his wife. Not his wife, but they knocked him upside the head on Fifth Avenue. I mean, so, so this is, we have to look at that, we have to.
I have a good business idea for celebrations by us, by the way, which is to cater carjacking. So I feel like no one's probably doing that. And it'd be pretty interesting. You'd have to have a sort of grab and go menu, handheld. But I feel like also the ads get you a lot of attention.
Help me.
Just for reasons of legality and insurance, she should only cater the victim. Otherwise, there could be a conspiracy issue. You can ask one of your legal experts.
No, just help me. You all, Max doesn't mean this, really.
I'm not investing in this. This is not a statement on behalf of any firm that I am now or could be associated with.
Carol Soskin, it's Lorraine's birthday, so please wish her a happy birthday. Reach out to her, okay, sweetie? She's right there. It's Lorraine's birthday, Lorraine Dunkley Hay, Mrs. Hay's birthday. So I'm sending you much love today. I'm trying to keep it together here. I think it's about some of the things that Dr. Wolf says. He is crazy. But happy birthday, Lorraine. Sending you much, much love. I hope that this is just a joyous day for you. And what a blessing it is that you have had another trip around the sun. Thank God for you. Everybody, please try to stay warm. Check on a neighbor if you can. Just do, and be very careful when you go outside because it is icy. It is icy. It is icy. It is icy. It is
Happy
icy.
birthday to all. I should probably rush to my next thing, but it was as always a pleasure. And happy
Max.
birthday to Lorraine.
Thank you for Lorraine. Did you see Max wished you happy birthday? Yay! But
Hope
you know,
she
but
ruined the
thank
day for
you.
you.
But I hope you know just how much you mean to us, Max. We really appreciate the fact
Likewise.
that you. Oh my goodness! I mean, you mean the world to me. But I mean, my group.
Very much so.
You know, the fact that you come and share all of this information with us, it means so much. It means so much. I just saw Max Myrick from.
Ideas. Yeah.
Well, Max Myrick from DC said, we need you. You give such great information and you make that happen. So I want to thank you for that. I really do. I really do. You've been a jewel. You've been a jewel, and I thank God for you. I really do.
Well, I will look forward to joining everyone next week, and I hope everyone has a good and a safe week. And it will be interesting to see tomorrow morning if people want to look at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. You get the January 2022 jobs report, and it might be that's what's causing some concern here. The estimates have been taken down for that.
Well, just very quickly, what do you think we're going to see tomorrow? What should we be looking out for?
My guess is a weak number, but maybe not as weak, because I think it'll take a little while to sort out the churn from the Omicron. But I know that part of the problem is that the jobs reports we tend to get, they actually only reflect the first 2.5 to 3 weeks of the month. So they stop actually the questionnaires, sending them out about halfway or more. So probably the reality through, mid-late January, like in the 20s, 21, 22, 23 January. And so that was probably the absolute apex of the Omicron crisis, at least in some places like New York and California. Although I think that the numbers may be coming up still in some of the more rural locations.
Okay.
So, depends on when the sort of Omicron-related labor market weakness hit different areas. As this disease has done in the past, it doesn't hit every place at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It hits different places at different times, and it tended to be kind of into the big coastal cities first, and then to sort of fan out from there.
Okay. First.
That's the sort of New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say there were days in late January in the very recent past where 3,500 to 4,000 Americans every day were dying and just didn't make it on the news. So even though it's a milder disease, it's so good at spreading, but we lose a lot of people.
Well, and remember we're losing a lot of people because a lot of people over the past 2 years didn't get to the doctor. So like one of my friends.
That too.
That absolutely. A lot of people are dying of a lot of things other than COVID, and we need to be real clear on that. That's still not the number one killer in the United States. So everybody, now that things are kind of opening up again, please, please, please go get your regular exams. Please go get them. Please, please go get them. Because that is something, as I speak to medical personnel, that is an issue that is building and exploding. People who were not able
the
to.
Other problem is the hospitals, the medical system need to provide the other services to stay solvent also.
Well, yeah, but it's just, look, people, there's a lot going on here. And what we really need more than anything, we need Medicare for all, so that if you get sick for any reason, you don't go broke trying to get well. And we need to open up, we need to have more schools, let more people into the United States who want to teach and who want to serve, who want to be part of this society. We need to educate the people who are here, the children who are here. Somebody out there's got the cure to cancer, or certainly they have an idea that can mitigate it, and AIDS, and on and on and on. We need our kids in school, and we need our artists. We need everybody. We need everybody. So think about that. Have a think about that.
Need to have a place where they can be there, productive. Yes. Good for them and good for everyone.
It's good for all of us, Max. You need everybody. The world would be so much poorer if we didn't have Aretha Franklin and Barbara Streisand and Roberta Flack and Luther Vandross and Neil Diamond and Michael Bublé. We just keep on going. John Basquiat and Picasso. We need everybody. Everybody. You need the person who serves you your food in the hospital. We need everybody matters. Everybody matters. Everybody matters. And so thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Wolf. I'll talk to you a little bit later.
Take care. Goodbye,
Sending
all.
you so
Bye-bye.
much love.
Talk
Sending
next
you
week.
so much love. Everybody, have a wonderful day. We love you, Lorraine. Happy, happy, happy birthday. God bless you, sweetie. God bless you. Carol said, whose birthday is that? I need to know. There you go. Not me. Love you all. See you tomorrow, God willing.